And oh, sorry about that. You must give them the best so that way you're able to sort of become a subject matter expert. Everybody knows who you are. Then you're able to monetize it through other products. So you're basically like repositioning your content from a free social media to conferences, books, stores, affiliates, and partnerships. And I think everybody that pretty much has followed his concept, it's worked. When you listen to the stories that people start from nothing to basically running multi-million dollar businesses. And I think a lot of the people in this book I actually follow, but by the time you come across them, they're already like famous, they're already running multimedia platforms. So it was quite encouraging to read the first one and see how do you start and how do you get yourself there. And I'm hoping that in the next few weeks, I'm going to take each chapter and follow it and sort of apply it, not just reading it, and see if it actually works. And yeah, so basically that was my take to see. I'm going to try and apply it and see if it works. And I think because he wrote it 10 years ago, as he says, a lot of the stuff is redundant. But in 2007, I think, when Facebook started, everybody realized it was a game changer. It's going to change how we communicate. It's going to change how we relate. It's going to change how the media also controls your content out there. So anybody, I think if you're keen on social media, you're on the right path. But for somebody like me, I think his advice can be a little bit hard because I'm not keen on social media. I prefer live interactions with people, which COVID does not allow much for that. So I found it interesting from that point of view. So Rosha, I don't know if that covers enough and for people that have read any one of the books.
Thanks. What is, I mean, the difference between the two books? I haven't read the other one.
Oh, this is the formula. It's got 11 chapters, right? Yeah, it's got 11 chapters. No, 12 chapters. Sorry, 13 chapters on how to basically leverage. It goes from if you've got zero social media, zero content, to how to create content to a point where you're actually monetizing it and you run a multi-million business. And these guys from this second book, they followed this to the T. They took some people did not take every single step. They took like one part of the advice, and they basically say they build a multi-million dollar media platform or business based on what this book gave them. So it's almost like evidence of sorts of, if you read, somebody will say, I followed the idea of caring, I followed the idea of just, and I mean, Gary Vee is like, it doesn't matter how bad your content is, just keep it out, just keep going, keep sharing. And a lot of people did that. Or, if your ideas or your content seems irrelevant, still keep talking, just be out there and build a brand, but be authentic. And authenticity is a big thing, I think, as you say, in the second book, in the yellow book, because people are like, you know what, I was authentic, I found my voice, I found my platform, I found my videos. And it's also a lot of it. What's interesting is people were pivoting, which made it timely for COVID, because last year the buzzword was pivot. And a lot of the book people that followed, they were at a dead end career, or they were not working, or they were doing other things, and they just took Gary Vee's formula and pivoted and created a brand that's more authentic and made them more money. So the second one, it's almost like the application of the first book. So as you read the second one, you hear things that people will say, oh, Gary Vee said this and I listened, or he called me and gave me advice and I listened. And I think if anybody listens to Gary Vee on podcast, you'll hear him giving people bite-sized advices that you can tell that person's business is about to turn from that piece of advice.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what made you say, okay, I think we need to read this book?
I think, as I said, everybody last year needed to pivot. You needed to be online. It was actually quite, I don't know, it's still stressful when you say to somebody, can you hear me on Zoom? Can you turn on your camera? Can you navigate this? Can you, and for me, last year, dealing with the SMMEs and realizing that people still don't even know how to get on Zoom, that means they're not going to be able to sell. I was actually frustrated. I only just got to Clubhouse now, and I'm always like, I'm an early adopter. I was on Facebook before it even got out of campus. I was on, I think back before Facebook, there was Skype. So I'm always like trying to sort of see what, I don't want to be a technology laggard, but I'm not like, I'm not that advanced. But I think what I realized last year working with SMMEs, and I set up a disruptive advisory board literally at the beginning of COVID. And it had been a concept before, but during COVID, we moved so much faster because I was generally just talking to the rest of the world. Suddenly, I had mastermind groups with people from Poland, from the UK, from everywhere. So it's just like everything just aggravated aggregated really easily and quickly. And I started listening to him. I mean, he curses, and as he says, you need to get through the cursing before you can hear the message. And you realize just how generous he actually is. And some of his advice, when you start a business, you tend to get this anxiety that I'm giving out too much, I'm not charging. How do I charge? How do I package my content? And it's almost what he says, it's almost like build it and they'll beat a path to your door. That's what some other advice that like just be out there and keep being out there and keep sharing content and being, position yourself as a subject matter expert. And so some of the businesses or even young professionals that I talk to, being on our boards, is that they've got jobs, but they've got expertise elsewhere that they want to express, and they don't know how. They don't know how to build a community even, and you get a lot of people that will also say, oh, follow me, listen to me, but they're not giving you good quality. And Gary Vee is all about good quality and how to create a subject matter expert. And I tested it with a few people last year where on Instagram, we'll give somebody a calendar and say, you know what, if you don't want to be famous for X and you want to be known for something else, start being intentional, plan your content, give people good quality content, think about it. And within a week, you'll see a shift. I had somebody who increased their followers from like, he's actually a celebrity who was stuck at 110. And he just for a year, his followers were not changing. And he changed his content. It was more authentic, more himself, not posing, not being anybody else, but authentically there. And in a week, his market just increased, his followers increased by 10%. And which basically I had to think content, because I overthink content. I overthink being in front of a camera and telling people stuff and having a monologue with a little hole in your computer is hard. So I basically just listened to him in terms of how to take out raw content and what to focus on. And I think I've been sharing the message with other people, like take out raw content, and eventually people actually will offer to pay. I had somebody like, I'll pay you for that advice that I was literally giving for free. So I think I kind of like how he takes entrepreneurs starting from zero, and considering that now with internet, I mean, back then he spent 15,000 US dollars advertising on Facebook, but now you don't have to advertise. You just basically, if you push in content, people generally follow. And if you're in business, you got to go digital. And we're not going back to normal. And I think he's the most famous online marketing expert by far right now. You don't hear anybody talking about him in South Africa. He's super famous in India. He's quite famous in China. He's famous in the US. And I kind of thought, why is he not equally famous in South Africa? We need to sort of go through the fluff, the swearing and the cursing, and hear what he has to say. And his message is quite simple, and in terms of, I think there's another book that hopefully in the far future we'll also read it, like Jab, Jab, Uppercut, give, then ask, which also is the power of networking, like how you should, because a lot of people contact me and say, I want to get into this sector. How do I do it? And I'm like, ask people what you can do for them. How can I help you? How can I help you before you ask for anything? And I think that's also, if you're raising young graduates, which I'm in an academic environment, that's the message you want to give to entrepreneurs is give, and how do we build around that? How do we build businesses that are like social enterprises? Because last year it was a year of giving, it was a year of pivoting. If you're doing well, you have to help others. If you're a business, you have to give something to others. And it's sort of like getting that as a foundational principle for young enterprises. So I think it worked for me. It worked for the businesses the micro businesses that we work with. And that's what basically turned me to Gary Vee as sort of a Bible for
Okay.
marketing.
All right. Awesome. Maybe let me just do my review, and then I mean, I know Maricela also has read the book, and if there's anyone else on the platform who also wants to share their view of the book, please feel free to also jump in after Melissa. If there's no one else who wants to jump in, then I'll have one or two questions that we can discuss amongst ourselves, if that's okay. I think for me, I mean, like I was saying earlier on, Gary V is this guy, and to your point, and he's quite popular. You see him if you're on the net. I mean, he's got about
Teboho, I think Russia's he got cut or he
Oh,
got lost.
I thought I'm the one who was frozen, and I couldn't understand why. But it was actually
No.
about the number of followers that Gary V has.
Yes, I think, and I think he was sharing just his take on the book. Possibly Malisela can share feedback, because I know he did discuss something earlier on, and then possibly Rosh will hop back on.
I think he's back on. Yeah, he's now taken back posting. You got stuck at he's got about, and you're about to tell us how many followers.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I checked, he's got about 2 point something million followers on Twitter, on Facebook. He just has this global following. But before I read the book, I mean, I know that he's an entrepreneur. I mean, I read somewhere that by the time he was 8 years old, he had about 7 lemonade stands by the age of eight. And when he started working in his family business, because his father used to run a wine manufacturing business. When he came through, no, before that, in high school, he started selling this baseball cards. They have this baseball card. In high school, he was selling that. And by the time he finished high school and started working in his father's business, he had saved about 30,000 US dollars in the mattress. Like, this is like 300,000 rand in the mattress. That's how entrepreneurial he was from a young age. When he then started working in his father's business, I think when he took over, I mean, he's 45, 46. He took over the business in 1994, started getting involved. His father's business was making about $3 million per annum. And then in 1997, he discovered the internet, and then he then opened up a sort of like a website for the family business. So it's sort of like Shopify. So he sort of started, building the business online and pushing it online. And from 1994, when he got involved, from 3 million, then they started growing. 1998, they were making 10 million revenue. 2001, they were making 20 million revenue. By 2004, they were making about 60 million revenue per annum, from 3 million to 60 million, within a space of about 10 years when he got involved. And simply by, pushing the business online, so he's this remarkable entrepreneur, quite eccentric, as Tebo has said. But so I've always known that about him, and so and I've watched and followed him on social media. I follow him on social media. I watch his clips. I listen to his podcast. Um, but I think when I started reading the book, because for me it was a bit hard to get the hard copy, and I think I'm still gonna get it. Then I went for the audiobook. So audiobooks are not my favorite, but I decided let me go to. And I don't know. I mean, I'm quite curious to hear what your views are about audiobooks, because my challenge with audiobooks is I need to sit still and listen and concentrate. So I'll be listening and I'll be doing something else, I'll do something, and then I get distracted. And then in the background, I hear there's something interesting. Then I have to stop and say, okay, let's go back. Let's go back. And then I say, what was he saying? And then when he starts saying other things, then I wander off and I do other things. So Audiobooks, I do listen to them once in a while, but I find myself, I wonder quite a lot when I do audiobooks than when I physically read. Because when I physically read, I'm forced to concentrate. Um, so then I listened to his audiobook. The first chapter, I was like, personal brand. I'm not a personal brand. I don't believe in this. Yeah, you're a personal brand, and this is how you must dress and do. That for me is like cosmetics. That's not personal brand. Like, please, man, it's like image. Get an image consultant for that. Like people are so obsessed with the outward. How do I look? Is my accent proper? If you're coming from an academic background, those things don't matter, right? What matters is what's in here. So I come from this, like, you can have this guy who comes in flip flops and he comes in his lecture stands and he puts all this formula on the board. And it's like, wow, this is beautiful, right? So I come from that academic background, like, this is beautiful. Not you come prim and proper. For me, plus, I come from Pretoria University, right? Like taking with the Buddhists, like a is the last thing. Like, please, Buddhists don't care about that thing. Image, looks, whatever. No, it's content. And when it comes to content, they perform miracles. So when I read the first chapter, I'm like, oh no, what is the book doing to us now? Personal branding. This is gonna be a long book, right? So then I put it down. It's like, I'm not gonna go through this. Maybe let me find a way, other ways. Then I put it down for a week. I didn't go back to it. I put it down for a week, and then I'm like, okay, let me, go through chapter 2, and let me try and go through chapter 2. By the time I got to chapter 3, then it was very interesting because then he went deeper. Then I understood what he was talking about. You know, and I mean, it's like I have like 5 points, and I'll go through them quickly. And I think when he started talking about finding your passion, right? He says, whatever you do, and this is a message that you get all over. If you read most books, find your passion, do what you love, find your passion because it will carry you through. And I think he starts with that. If you're going to build a personal brand around your passion. And maybe it's because I firmly don't believe that you go out there and you say, I am intentionally building a personal brand. I don't think that's the way to build a personal brand. I think the way to build a personal brand is to do what you love and be authentic about it and be genuine about it.
Deborah, do you want to invite somebody else to share in the meantime, and then Rosh can continue?
Sorry,
again?
say that again.
Sorry, Lora, you were saying?
I think she thought you were frozen. She was saying,
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Maybe
Okay.
she is on her side.
Let me check with everyone else. Can you guys hear me? Melissa Lashama, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Shama, can you hear me? Okay, Shama is shy tonight. Lolo, can you
No,
hear me?
I'm here. I'm here. I can hear. Thank you.
All right. Lolo, can you hear me? I'm not so sure if she can hear
I
me.
think Lolo might be frozen on her side.
Yeah. Okay. So, I always believe a personal brand is not something that you build directly. You say, now I'm building a personal brand. I believe personal brand is a byproduct of you doing something quite amazing and being consistent over that thing, and then a brand will form around you. And what he talks about is find your passion. Then I started to say, okay, now we are getting somewhere. Then I started to enjoy the book. So find your passion, and then build a personal brand around it, right? But how do you do that? And to your point, about great content. It's important that you build great content online. Know your stuff, and to your point also, he doesn't say. Maybe in the first book he does, but in the second book he doesn't say how do you build that great content. But from personal experience, reading books, getting a mentor, experts, you are then able to formulate your own content, and you're able to connect the dots. So building a personal brand is about, in fact, a personal brand to him is great content. So it starts with passion, number one. Love what you do because you're going to be spending most of your time doing it every day. So make sure that whatever that time that you spend on a daily basis, you are spending it doing what you love. So that's number one. Number two, build a personal brand around great content. What are you, if you're passionate about sports, for instance, build your brand around sports. If you're passionate about rugby, or if you're passionate about the arts, if you're passionate about books or whatever, build great content around that. So that's number two. Number three, he talked about learn how to tell a story. And people love stories far more than facts and figures. So I found that to be quite interesting. I've heard that several times, but I think it was also quite interesting. What I love is emotion sells. People love stories because stories bring the emotion. Facts and figures don't bring the emotion. Stories bring the emotion, and people love emotion. So if you are able to find what you're passionate about, if you're able to, number two, have content that you're passionate about. Number three, if you can tell a story using that content. And then, number four, he then says, find your medium. Basically, to your point, and for me, this was like, now, this is, the show can end after this one. Because for me, it was find your medium. So, and he talks about, I mean, he goes through all the mediums: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, blah, 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 blah. And he says, there's all these mediums, there's all these platforms, right? And I think I always battle with people who are active in all those platforms. I'm like, this for me, being on social media in all platforms is a full-time job. How do you maintain Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram? For me, it's like there is just no way you can do all the things, right? And I think the point he's saying, find what works for you. If you are somebody who likes writing, for instance, if you're passionate about writing, there's a medium for you. Maybe try blogging. If you are somebody who is into audio, for instance, you've got a great voice and whatever, you can go through and do podcasts. If you are into videos and animation and things like that, there's YouTube for that. And if you're into images and taking great pictures, then Instagram is for you because you are somebody who likes capturing images. And he says you then need to work out which platform suits you better, And for me, he gave me, because I always used to feel guilty that maybe I'm the one who's a laggard here because everybody's doing all the social media things at the same time. So I used to feel like, maybe there's something wrong with me. But after reading, it's like, okay, so I'm not the odd one here. You need to, look at what works for you, and then choose that, and then follow the steps, right? Build a brand, content, tell stories around the media that you are passionate, that talks to you. And for me, the media that talks to me is blogging, right? I can stay away from all these other platforms the whole day, but I know for a fact a day can't pass without me not blogging. If it does, it means I'm either very sick or there's something, but for me, blogging is my medium. I can not even open Facebook or Twitter or whatever. I always feel like I've missed anything, but for me, blogging is my medium. And not only just
Can I say something there?
go for it.
You actually also people underestimate status on WhatsApp as a media platform. And you're quite good at it.
Yeah.
Like there's never a day where you're not sharing your content. But people waste their status moments with like jokes and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, put your content. Let us know who you are on your status. And you do that very well.
Yes. So thanks. And I think that's the thing. Because I mean, what Gary is doing with this book is he's saying these platforms are powerful, guys. And don't play Angry Bird. Don't go. These platforms, you can actually build an empire on them. And one of my favorite thought leaders, Seth Gooding, would always say that with the advent of social media, everybody owns a media company, right? Everybody owns a media company. We all own a media company because we have this platform where we can reach millions and millions of people. And if you want to sing, sing. If you want to write, write. If you want to dance, then the platform is there. And I think that's what Gary is doing. So he's actually going deeper into each of the platforms. And for me, I was like, this is amazing because I've never really thought of, no one has said to me, you don't have to be in all of them. You know, if similarly everybody says you have to be, but no one says, no, you actually don't have to be in all of them. Choose the ones that talk to you and start with those. And this is how you go about it. And I found that to be quite amazing. That's number 4. And then lastly, I'm done. And he talks about long-term patience. Now that you've decided which platforms work for you, and now be patient in building your brand, your stories, your content on that platform. Be dedicated, be patient. And he talks about the fact that when he started, it took him a very long time for him to get people to say, this guy has got something interesting. So he says, and I found it because he says, you will write whatever. If you post, you write a blog, whatever. People in the first, they may not necessarily read your content in the first 100 blogs, for instance. But someone, when you're on your 200th blog, someone else will come and say, I read your 98th blog and I found it to be quite interesting, you know? And that is when you're already on your 200th blog and no one has been reading your blog in the first 100. And for me, because I've been blogging for quite some time, it's been the case. No one was really read my blog. When I started blogging 2004, whatever, no one was really reading my blog. Today, I have over 200 people on a daily basis reading my blog, right? I don't check my analytics, but when I do check, there's on average 250 people who read my blog all over the world. And I'm like, oh, even if I don't blog today, over 250 people will read my blog. And like, wow, I don't make it a habit of checking my analytics because I don't do it for that. That's what I don't blog for analytics. But it's quite interesting that now there's more people subscribing. Why? Because of consistency, and which is what he talks about. Be consistent, be patient, and just try and be authentic and post quality content. And over time, I've seen personally over time, your viewership will increase. Over time, you'll get the occasional readers who, if I don't blog for 2 or 3 days, I'll get an email saying, are you okay? So that was quite interesting. So would I recommend this book? No, we'll get to that. So that's my review of the book. 5 things: find your passion, build a personal brand with great content, learn how to tell a story, find a medium that's suitable to you, and then be patient and build and be dedicated. So for me, those are my takeaway from the book.
All right.
So, yeah.
Let me just hop in. Yeah.
Yes.
Can everyone see me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I also really like the book. I didn't finish it. I think Dr. Rosh, you said something about audiobooks. I really like audiobooks. Like I really, really, really like audiobooks, much more than reading hard copy. But the thing is, I also, in a sense, like I read when I go to work or whenever I travel, that's the best for me. Like even the whole day today, I was trying to catch up, just listening to it whilst I was at work, but I also need sometimes a bit of concentration on that. But I really like audiobooks. That's my go-to. But yeah, about the book, I really like the book. It almost, and both of you said it, the authenticity of what Gary mentions and how he actually portrays him doing what he needed to do is really something that really that was an important part when I was reading, as I was listening to it. Just the fact that he almost puts it in a way that put yourself out there because you never know who's watching. After you putting yourself out there, you will get to a place where, because it's such a habitual thing where it's just part of you, people will start gaining that interest that you might have thought maybe is not interesting. I like watching YouTube, and just like I do a lot of research of YouTube. If I don't understand anything, for instance, I'll go to YouTube, and you'll find that there's something that someone put on that was like 10 years back, or, back then, like 2009, 2010, 2010. And I think to myself, wow, this guy's been on Instagram, on YouTube for so long that his content is reaching me 11 years later, and that just kind of like gives me that this medium has been there, and there's people that have been doing this thing on this medium. And that is one thing I think I got, like, it kind of like was a light switch. Like, I've always kind of like known it, but I think Dr. Rosh, you said it on the consistency part of someone just doing it because they know that this is their passion. So a lot of what he was saying, I could resonate. I'm not necessarily a social media person per se, but I'm always on it. So for instance, I don't necessarily like sharing maybe what I have. Maybe I'm like you, Tabo, where I would rather talk to someone and share with them personally. And Dr. Rush knows I'm always picking his brain when we're together, because I want that interaction. I want that me seeing the person. But how I like what Gary was saying though in that is that you almost just put yourself out there, and whoever catches onto what you're saying will catch on, and you never know until you try. One of the things that I really like, and again, it comes back to the authenticity part, is as you bring up your content, you become better, I don't believe there's anyone that ever starts something and they're already top of the list from get-go. We see all of these, and obviously he's pushing on social media. A lot of the things that he says is all about the medium and social media medium that you're using and everything else, and how when he started, he wasn't the greatest, but eventually he got to a place where he got comfortable with it after 7 months, as he said, with the camera following him. Is that it becomes habitual, where it becomes part of you, and as you become part of that that's every day, instead of being someone that is very pretentious and, oh, I want people to see only this side of me, that will eventually, you can't fake it for a long time, you know what I mean? But if it's something that's your passion, if it's something that is part of you, you are able to live it out, because it is secondary to you waking up, for instance, or eating. It's just as good as you do that. So it was really amazing in that, is that learning how to be authentic and just sticking to it, not think. And I like what you said, Dr. Rush, around you blogging, and you blogging for your sense and not for, I want people to see me, because it could so easily be but people are not looking at my blogs, or people are not viewing my channel, and you get so discouraged. But if you're doing it out of a place of passion and out of a place of, I'm trying to help whoever is out there that needs my help, you never know who you might catch onto, right? I think one of the things that it reminds me of is coming back to YouTube. When I was starting my business, I remember a lot of the knowledge that I gained was not only textbook, because a lot of the stuff was a bit of mathematics and everything, but anything that I didn't understand, I would go onto the YouTube channel, for instance, and it'll be some random guy that's, like I said, 2011, 2012, and I would learn, and I'd be like, actually, this makes sense. Why doesn't anyone implement it? This guy, there's so much content on here that you can just take and make it into a business. Why don't people do that? But it's all about the person that did it out of the willingness to say, you know what, I'm just sharing. Because out of the sharing, you never know who might catch on. The last thing I wanted to say is, it reminds me of so many times of, how social media has become how he talks about how social media is your gateway to making a living, right? And I see a lot of these social media people. The biggest channel on YouTube has 100 million subscribers, right? Over 100 million subscribers. And this guy actually started this YouTube channel playing video games, and it was just him trying to show. And now he talks about politics. And I'm like, how does a person go from doing video games and people streaming all the way to 100 million subscribers later? He's actually just talking politics, and he's just doing random things, and he's being paid to live his life. but how that has just become second nature to him, him speaking out his mind, getting the influence of 100 million people around the world to talk about maybe issues that actually are present. And I like the fact that when he started, that was him. I mean, he was a gamer, but it grew with him to who he is now. And people can, if they want to, look at the change that he has been through from a gamer all the way to talking politics, and you can kind of like also see where these changes have come in at a certain state. Maybe, for instance, obviously COVID is something that is significant, for instance, and how that has changed him into what he talks about now. And for me, a big thing is that medium being a gateway to you just helping people, or you just being who you are from a public point of view, or from just the social media platform that you are on. And just, I think the last thing from my side as well is I like again on how choosing your crowd, choosing your platform, because when you know who your crowd is, you know how to communicate to your crowd. I don't think I always these days, because I like LinkedIn. I like learning, and I like LinkedIn because it exposes me to a lot of learnings that people are putting on LinkedIn as well. So for instance, it might be something in machine learning, it might be something in data science, or it might be something in technology in itself. And I get a lot of what people are doing because they want to post their businesses, they want to post what they're doing out there. So I'll go onto LinkedIn just to see what people are doing. And I'd be like, oh, actually, let me research what this person is doing. And then from there becoming, oh, wow, this is actually brilliant. I want to follow this person and see what they keep on doing. And I like that fact is that's what I like about choosing your crowd, because your crowd will always be your crowd and will always come back to what is Dr. Rosh doing, or what is Tebogo doing, because that's who they are. They represent themselves best on that kind of social media. And I think on top of that, as you become who you are on one platform, I think it becomes easier to transition a bit more to maybe other social medias that you had never been able to transition onto. For instance, let's say Twitter. Now, let's say Dr. Rosh wants to start just little segments of what he used to do in 140 characters, or whatever it is. And now that becomes a gateway for people to start reading more of his blogs, because now he just takes a piece of what he wrote that is very catching and puts it onto Twitter for someone to be like, wow, actually. And then that actually converts that person to the other platform that Dr. Rosh is actually always writing on. So it's I like social media and just technology in itself, because you can almost link these things together, right? To use one thing to gain more on another. I mean, all of these social lights and all of these people that are on blogs and whatever, you find that, like you're saying, Dr. Rosh, he has 2 million followers on Twitter, whatever million on Instagram. Those are all growth channels. Those are all things that you can get paid on. It's not limited to one thing. And that's what I think he's also, for me, what he's trying to get his message out to, is that don't limit what you can do because you think, oh, this is the only thing I can do. But over you growing, there's all these platforms that you can experiment in, and you never know if you're good at it until you actually try.
Awesome. Great one. Thanks, Mali. I don't know if there's anything, Shama, Lolo, please feel free to jump in. Anything, Tebogo, before we get into our one or two, anything that stood out for you?
Actually, in terms of what you said, two things that resonate. When you said personal branding, and I think what he says that you are a brand, whether you like it or not, and if you're not out there, then you also have you stand the risk of people branding you the way that they want. And actually, as you're saying, because when you think you can't curate a brand, I mean, my whole job was being a reputation specialist at some point for South Africa overseas, selling South Africa overseas as the investment brand. And having to sort of learn the authenticity in branding, and realizing that if you sell something that you're not, people actually can see right through it and reject it. And I think he also does mention that, you know, it's like, I'm actually thinking that, you know, Gary's like, you know how Oprah will mention something and it blows? And it's amazing how people, like, you realize that real entrepreneurs are dying to be mentioned by Gary V. And they're constantly asking, like, you know, just being seen breathing the same air as Gary V. It's sort of like people, you know, get to the next step. And I thought, but nobody says Gary V is the Oprah of social media. He's just Gary V. And I think that's, I like that when he says, don't be the derivative of somebody else somewhere, and people can see right through if you're the wrong brand.
Yeah.
Then the second thing that you said, when you said, I mean, I found one of your old blogs from like 10 years ago based on something that I'm doing recently. And it was really exciting because it affirmed that I was on the right path, or I was not wrong about what I was doing. And there's somebody that saw it years before. And immediately that's, you became like a thought leader. I was like, oh my God, I got to talk to you, you know? And at that time also I was looking for a book club, and I found that you do this book club. So it has led to, now we're reading this, you know, so it's sort of evolving in an amazing way that, you know, I mean, that's a good point to say something that you wrote 10 years ago, it actually can work for somebody today, you know, getting your content out there. And I like what I said, when you say LinkedIn, I'm in LinkedIn, I'm like, LinkedIn is Facebook for nerds, and that has worked for me. And I like that with LinkedIn, there was time that you could subscribe and see how you're moving. Like when you post a story, you know, how it moves, who reads it, and how it actually improves your social, your sort of your grade, your rating standing in terms of the subject matter expert. So, and I remember when I tested it, I was like at number 500 in terms of, if you mention China, you know, in my network, I was like on number 500. And I was like, I want to be in the top 100 of people on LinkedIn when somebody searches China. And by the time I was done, I was actually on the top 20 international people on China. And LinkedIn actually gives you a formula. They tell you, like somebody, follow somebody, comment on somebody's thing, post something. Like they'll tell you, do these 5 things. And after 5 things, I'll tell you, this is where you stand. So I liked it because it gives you a formula. It gives you a benchmark. It teaches you how, it teaches you how to actually create content and how to also give, because it's not about just taking this, you know, you need to follow other people and decide. But also what you're saying about in education, I'm accidentally in education. And what's interesting is that students actually brand you. Students will actually talk about, this lecture is this way, this, like, you know, if you take, like, they'll take, now students follow the lecture. They take a course that is by an interesting person. You know, in my days back then, you probably went through the same, Russia, where you do a BCom or you do a BSc and you just follow what the school tells you. You didn't choose the lecture. And I think now students are like, I want to learn with so-and-so, this person. I mean, I supervise somebody that initially when I was partnered with her, she said to me, I don't want you to supervise me. You do not have a reputation of producing masters, because I'm new. She was basically my 3rd student. And now she passed, and she passed really well. And I'm thinking, great, now I have a reputation. Then somebody else will be like, oh, you've actually supervised 3 people. I hear that you can produce, you know. So people do that. I mean, people learn, you choose the right educator, so to speak, and position yourself as that. You know, you gotta share your content and say, I produce this. It's almost like kept bragging rights about your knowledge per none. And I think Gary's not shy to brag that he knows something better than anybody else. And that, I think maybe some of us suffer from saying, you know, these are my bragging rights. I know better than the next person.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing that he says is that, and I think it comes up quite a lot, is you need to have something to offer that you are far much good at than anyone else. And I think for me that stands out, to say you don't just come there and brand yourself in cosmetics. It's actually far more than just cosmetics. It's not, I look good, look at me, da, da, da. It's not about that. He says, if you want to, it's basically what he's saying is, be a thought leader in something that makes you stand out from anyone else. And that's what he says. It's not about cosmetics. This is about, yes, cosmetics matter, but more than anything else, it's about what content are you bringing out there that's fresh, that's unique, that people will find interesting? How have you packaged that content? Which medium are you using? So I found that to be quite, you know, not just be social media, because there's some people who are famous for just being famous, and I'm like, okay, but and there are some people, and I think it talks to your audience, and I think people follow people for different reasons. But I think ultimately it's about content management. How are you packaging it? And yeah, I found that to be quite interesting. I mean, to your point, Mali, I think you mentioned something. He mentioned something like YouTube will be television and television will be YouTube. So I'm like, wow, that's quite interesting because in fact, what I picked up in today's modern TVs is they always come with some form of YouTube channel in there, and you find people who are watching streaming TV far more than they are watching your DSTV and your. If they do watch DSTV, it's for news, but more often people will be streaming on YouTube or they'll be streaming on Netflix. So I found that to be quite interesting. But I think what he's basically also saying is authenticity more than anything else. Be real, be you. Don't curate yourself to a point where your voice is not coming through. And to a point that people will pick it up. So yeah. Couple of questions. Let's go through a couple of questions and then we have 30 minutes to go. And Shama, Lolo, please feel free to jump in if you have anything to say. First question is, what was your initial reaction to the book? Did it hook you immediately, or did it take you some time to get into it? I think for me, I think I've already said it. For me, it was like after chapter 1, I was like, kill me now, right? I struggled. When someone started talking about personal brand, I'm like, no, I'm a human being. I'm a human being. I have emotions. I'm moody today. I'm excited. I'm a human. Now I need to start behaving as this. Well, no. But yeah, the first chapter for me was like, why, Tebogo, why? But after the first chapter, I think by chapter 3, then I started to say, wow, this is quite exciting. I'm like, thank God, I wouldn't have ordinarily went to Tesco and bought this book. I wouldn't have, if it was not because of this review, I would have put it aside as one of those books that you read the first chapter and you just drag yourself to finish it. But I think after the third or fourth chapter, I actually started to enjoy it, thoroughly enjoyed it. But yeah, maybe it's because of me and this branding thing. I just don't think it's authentic. I think it's just curated. It's not real. But I enjoyed when he started bringing the authenticity to say it's not just about cosmetics and look and feel. It's sexually you need to be authentic. And I was like, yes, now we are talking. So yeah, that's my view. I don't know, Manisela, maybe you can go next. What was your?
So I think from the get-go, I was also, to be honest, I was also like, okay, the brand thing, personal brands. Like, I think what caught me, first of all, is what he said about how these days you find entrepreneurs being celebrities, and not out of a place of, oh, look at me, I want to be a celebrity. But I mean, a celebrity is basically someone that's being praised for what they are doing a lot more, I guess. And that for me was more of a, actually, that's so true. And it got me curious from there to say, what does he have to say about what this is all about? About, well, what does crushing it have to do with entrepreneurs being that? But the more I listened, the more, and especially when it came to the personal stories, because I also listened to the yellow one, the yellow book, and a lot of I like true life stories in a way. Like my favorite movies are those that are about other people and what they went through, right? And that for me caught me even more. The fact that these people, yes, they used his ways of personal branding or his ways of doing business, and zoning into what their passion is. But I just like the fact that how they told their stories from their point of view in different industries. There's ones that did marketing. There's one that was doing blogging. There was one, and it all revolved around how maybe they went through, they went through what they went through, but going through that, this is how I implemented what Gary was saying. And that for me was quite interesting, because obviously it gives perspective of how one thing that, for instance, Gary mentioned can be seen in different ways within different industries, and that for me, again, was the catch to say, oh, what did other people do, or what did other people do, and how, for instance, he used his business, his dad's wine, wine platform, to get himself also onto, to basically trial out his way of doing things, and I think that for me was the biggest reason I continued listening, is just to hear what he has to say and what other people did to also see themselves in his shoes in a way, but for themselves.
Awesome.
I think the first story in the yellow one, I didn't like that much, because the person starts off as a celebrity model who looks good until she has to look ugly. And I'm like, oh, that's not like you're already there. But other stories are like guys that are not, and I also thought Gary Vee is like a genius. Like, when somebody's like, oh, do this, and you're like, no, but you've got a brain for it. I'm just an ordinary person. And, so the anecdotes are like ordinary people. They're not like Gary Vee entrepreneurial genius. So it made me feel like I need to go get the green one and follow this. And if I don't, then it's my fault. If at the end of a year, I'm not somewhere following this model, then I'm not somewhere. The green book, I kind of felt like it talks a lot about finding your passion without actually helping you narrow it down. And I think I've seen other people that are more helpful with how to narrow down your passion, and how to also fit it in what's current and what's trending. For instance, when you're saying about makeup, it's a whole makeup industry. And I remember this one girl said, go find makeup and decide that you're going to talk about pink lipstick, and that's all. And you're going to review every pink lipstick in the market, and that's content. So I think that took me, I was like, oh, Gary, stop it, finding your passion now, like what's next. And also because it frustrated, because I'm thinking, what is my passion? Because I'm still looking for that thing. In a day, I talk about many things. I talk about China, I talk about bees, I talk about a whole bunch of things. I talk about surfing, I talk about the law, fashion. And I kind of thought, okay, how do you choose? Because I think people find themselves in that like multi-polar thing to talk about. And I still kind of feel like I still will not do social media, but I'm gonna try, if I'm gonna follow this, and if it does work for everybody else with content, I'll try it. But I also realized that obviously, because it's a 10-year-old book, and he admits that by the time you read that, maybe whatever he's talking about will be obsolete, but the platform is the same. And I kind of think I wish there could be like an updated version every now and then, because as I say, I look at people who say, I need a job, but they're not, on their status, it's like jokes and other people's content. I'm like, why don't you get your job on status and post about what you're good at or what your knowledge is at? Like, there's actually an interesting guy who's a labor law specialist, and every day he posts like one piece of advice from CCMA. I mean, that's not even creating content. But then the first thing that you're going to think when you've got a labor matter, you're going to go to him, because that's it's like, in a way, you don't even have to be the best, you just have to be visible than the next guy. Like, you could have somebody who's got better content, smarter, better subject matter, but it's also visibility. And I think he misses that, like that visibility, like, being there. So that's what I didn't like. He went on and on a lot about finding your passion, but it wasn't like helping me. But the rest was actually great.
Okay.
Can I just add something on that, Dr. Rush? I think one of the things that made me still listen as well is I also didn't look at it through me becoming a personal brand, because but rather maybe the content rather being the personal brand, meaning not Malisela as the guy, but rather Malisela as always based, like you're saying, with labor law. We probably never seen this guy in your life, but you know him for his content, and that is the personal brand point of view. Dr. Rosh being, for instance, business and or whatever it is that you are. So for me, for instance, is I like tech. I really like technology, but I like technology from where I am here, like in South Africa, not. And Dr. Rush also knows this, is I'll always ask him, but how do you implement something from a South African point of view? So that, for instance, would be my personal brand, is what is technology for South Africa? You know, because I want to understand that. And that's, I'm always more of I'm a student of my trade in a way, where the more research I do, the more content I post, even if someone never has to see how I look, but they will always know that Malesela is a person that you can go to for technology within a place of South Africa.
That is
Awesome.
actually, I also like that a lot. Like it's actually, maybe that's what you should say, not personal brand, but content branding.
Yeah, if you put it that way,
Yeah, I think if you had put it that in your first chapter, say, how do you brand your content? You know, not how do you brand yourself? Because you know, you think, oh, I gotta like have like me as a girl, for instance, I'm like, oh God, if I go on a conference, I'm like, oh, I gotta look the right part, I gotta put on lipstick, this, you know,
it's perspective.
But funny enough, what's interesting about also that is I did a conference last week and I was so not ready for it. And I literally just jumped on and it was my next turn to speak like today. And the chat box was blowing up, honestly. Like I was actually like, oh my God. And when I'm done, I was like, hey, maybe I'm good at this. Maybe this is my thing. Like maybe I should volunteer to speak at more conferences. Even the conference host direct messaged me like, oh my God, you've been the most popular speaker at this conference. And I was a keynote speaker. And I was like, maybe this is my brand. Maybe I should just accept that I'm okay. I'm not too bad at conferences, and it's okay to, because I don't like the attention on me. It feels weird because it feels like personal branding. But maybe I should say, look, maybe somebody at a conference wants to listen to somebody who sounds ordinary and relatable and accessible and, makes information simpler. They don't want to, you don't have to sound super smart, but be invisible. Like Marcel, if you're doing tech, you want to write something that I could understand, not just for like your other tech smart people. Because if it's tech smart people, you're going to overthink it. You're going to think, oh, everybody knows what an AC/DC is. I don't know what it is. I could do that basic information and grow with you. And that's how you create a community, because I could grow with your fourth IR information of just a basic. You could raise us and you could find a whole bunch of followers like, oh, I'm so tired of everybody being overly smart about this, and we could grow it. Yeah. And you're right, maybe you should call it content branding. That's fun.
and Dr. Rush actually spoke about it earlier on. To be honest, even when you started speaking, I like how you obviously present yourself, because obviously you try and make it as simple as possible. And like you say, I can actually hear that in you. But Dr. Rush said it earlier on, and how storytelling, for instance, is such a big thing, and how, and storytelling is not this complicated thing. Malesela went to the shop and he went and bought cornflakes with milk, and then he came back. That's simple, right? You don't go, Malesela went to the box and he wanted one that's with this carbohydrates, and no, it doesn't. It only relates to those that talk to carbohydrates. But for any other average Joe or Jill, we are always gonna go to, I don't understand this. I need someone to explain it that is humane, like I am.
Okay, awesome. We have three questions to go. The other two are quick. How did the structure of the book affect the message? I haven't read the green one, the first book that came out in 2009. I obviously went through this. So the structure in this instance is it's an audio. So I've said I wander around quite a lot when it's audiobook. It's when I drive, maybe when I do a long distance drive, that then I'll be able to listen to an audiobook. And because I'm on a focused concentration long drive, I'm able to process the content. But if I'm busy, I get distracted. But I think with the new, at the beginning I got lost because I was not so sure. Because when you listen to the audiobook, there's different voices, right? So I know Gary's voice. So when I was listening to it, I was like, I know this is Gary. And then after a while, then there were other voices coming through. Then I was like, but what's going on here? And I was like, okay, what's happening here, right? But
Mm.
then what I loved is then I could understand, oh, so they are actually talking about them, having used the formula from the first book, and this is how it has impacted their lives. And there's some quite very good stories. There are some stories I'm like, wow, this is quite good. There's some stories I'm like, I'm not so sure. But after some time, I got the hang of it. I got to say, this is the message, and this is the testimony, and then that's how it works. So the structure of the book was, this is the message. I think in the first chapter it's scary all the way, and then as it went on, the message, testimony, and I actually kind of liked that. I was like, oh wow, that's quite interesting, and hearing different voices also for me worked. What then this book did is then it said, maybe I should have read the first book first. I struggle with these sequel books. These sequel books, it's like you read here and the person refers to the first book. It's like, what's the point? Why can't you just tell me here, I'm here now? Why do I have to go look for the first book? Oh no. So I kind of got that maybe I need to go get the first book. I'm like, okay, you know. The structure, it threw me off a bit at the beginning, but I got the hang of it. I loved the stories. The stories worked for me. I just wish that authors, if they're going to refer to the first, they must actually summarize for us what is the first book. But I also understand it's selling, so it's a sales thing. So he's forcing me to go buy, like Debo, who bought the two books, so it's forcing me to
Yeah,
go.
and they're not cheap, eh?
And that is exactly. So I think it's a sales strategy as well to make me feel FOMO, and then want to go back. But the structure, I felt like I'm missing out. I really felt like I should have read the first book. Um, the second book, it was okay. I got the message. I got what he was saying. It worked. I think ultimately it worked. I don't know.
Mm.
The structure, did it work
I
for
think,
you?
well, like you, like I was audiobooking the yellow book and I thought, no, you gotta go read the green book. And when I went to buy it, because I went to look for it about a month ago, and Exclusive Books looked at me like, who's that? And I thought, oh, now I have to like do digital. But then when I went back, they now have it. And, they say it's actually selling. So I think the yellow book, you can read it independently, but I was reading it as a series, and I wish I would actually, if I had known that it's two books and this is like anecdotal evidence, I wish I'd picked up where I want. Like you could read like pick any chapter and read. So there's no sequence in the lessons in the first chapter. In the yellow book, so I wouldn't be able. It's not a useful book. It's just like motivational, nice story. But the first book, you kind of say, if I had to have a manual of where I'm taking my business, I would go with the green book, and it follows, like it builds sequentially, and it's like you can't do chapter 10 before you do chapter, you can bite size, you can every month sort of say, or every week, this week I'm gonna apply. So the yellow book is not applicable, but it's a nice story to tell because everybody has a different DNA, and somebody might somebody will be like, oh, I was on Instagram and it's a nice story, but I can't use it. So it kind of felt like, oh, nice story. It's a nice motivational book. It's good that some people I know, some people I don't know, some ideas I know. And I'd say it made it like ordinary people achieving greatness. But I kind of felt like, oh, I want to go do, and they pick randomly like parts that work for them. It's not like, oh, I did in a series and this worked for me. So the yellow book was not that easy to warm up to. And yeah, I think I'm gonna read it again and just pick the stories that work for me, especially when I'm like, oh, I don't know what's going on with what I'm doing with my business. Then you can just pick stories that you like out of it. So I'd say people pick any chapter and read any chapter, not in sequence. But the green book works very well, very simple. Some chapters he stays too long in, and some chapters he basically it's like fast tracks it. But I think his message like passion, which I suppose it is the title of the book, right? Because it's cashing in on your passion. So it goes on and on and on and on and on. And that I almost thought, oh, I'm tired of like this passion story, but I had to read on because I had to come here and discuss this.
Thanks for that. Mali, the structure of the book, you read the second book.
Yeah, I had the second book. So I think it talks back to what you just said as well. It was all over the place, but from my point of view, it actually was. I could get the gist of what he was talking about. Obviously, I didn't know the detail, and I think that's where it kind of like sucked, the fact that I didn't know the detail of what he was trying to say. But because I like detail for myself as well, but at the same time, I could kind of like put the puzzle together with the different stories, because now I would say, okay, but what was his passion? What is his passion? What is their passion? And how they got through the book. Again, because I didn't go through the green book, there's certain places where I was just imagining how it could be. But most of the time, it was literally just puzzle building for me to say, oh, I get what he says there, or I get what she says there, and what that is. But I got the gist of it from reading or just listening to the first 2 chapters. I could get what he's trying to say and just kind of like build a puzzle for myself. But I think it would be ideal to have listened to the first one and, like Devo said, go to any other chapter and hear what they have to say about certain aspects of whatever that person implemented for themselves.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, last question, and then we close. If you were to rate the book out of 10, 1 being worst, 10 being great, what score would you assign and what and why? Okay, I'll be the last one to go on this one.
I've got a Gary V bias.
All right, go for it. Out of 10, 1 being worst, 10 being great.
I think I will rate it an 8 because it's old and a lot of things have happened since, and that's basically because it's a bit outdated. I'll rate the yellow one also an 8 because there's some stories that, as you say, that are like, you know. So yeah, I'd give it an 8. But I'd basically would convince everybody, say, you know what, listen to Gary V, get through if cursing gets to you, but it gets to me at some point, and you know, and once you get through it, you know, turn on to Gary V, because I got turned into Gary V last year from a mastermind group that I was in, and the person was like, oh my God, you don't know Gary V, like what are you, like how are you marketing without even listening to this guy? So I think it's an 8 because it's Gary V, and it's an 8 because it's a bit outdated, but it's not completely outdated. I mean, once you learn the formula, you can sort of adapt to what's latest now. And yeah, the other ones is just for the stories that some of the anecdotes that I wasn't really too crazy about.
Okay. Does an 8 mean you highly recommend it?
I highly recommend it. I think I actually thought it's a manual in every entrepreneur's bookshelf. And it's short, like you can finish it in this small, it's small, the font is big, and you can, I don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
You can finish it literally, if you're a fast reader, you can finish it in 2 hours.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, for me, I think I'll give it a 7. Reason being, look, I've known, I haven't listened to him like religiously, for instance, but I know him, and I've always kind of like wondered, but what does this guy do? Because he's not a face to something. So it was interesting for me to actually hear him out here on why he does what he does and who he actually is, right? But I like the fact that the giving part, where he does things because he's more passionate about it. He wants people to know about it. So for me, it drives him to tell people more and more and more about why he's doing the things that he does, and how a lot of people need to understand this, because this is how it could save them. But the only thing is the stories that he tells about, right? It's almost the same person that he, to a certain extent. So, for instance, he comes from a family that migrated to America, and the other guy, there's 2 other guys, for instance, in the beginning, in the chapter 3, I think, where they also came from families that come into a country, And I remember listening to something, I think was it last week, on YouTube, where it was talking about how a lot of the top CEOs of these top companies, like obviously Microsoft now, Google, or these guys actually are immigrants that came from other countries into America. And a lot of this time it was more of because these guys are backed against the wall, they have to achieve to a certain extent, you know. I remember there's one of the stories where the guy got this, was it the DJ guy or was it one of the other guys? It was one of the two, where both of them obviously migrated with their families into the country. But it's almost as if you have nowhere else to go. You need to do this, you know, or else you will fail. And they just needed the character. So that point, I would say he chose the same stories that tell the same kind of like grind or else you will fail. And that basically was the same message almost that he went through as well, where his dad obviously migrated and his dad needed to learn and started this business from a place of, I need to get this thing off the ground. And he was more of okay, well, from that point of view, I'm also just going to achieve, because I can't just be the normal, it's a small bottle store and that's all we sell. So I would say a lot of them talk back to, I'm against the wall, you know, I'm against the wall and I need to fight my way through. And if it's a place, I never heard of someone that says, you know what, I'm passionate about this a lot. Let me put it that way. I'm passionate about this, but, you know, I don't have to do this. You know, it's that he doesn't explain it from that point of view. And maybe that's why I give him a 7, but it really is a really good book. And I agree with that. It's a manual that entrepreneurs need to, and especially those that don't have to do what they're doing, but more of a look, you have to grind, because there's other people out there that are against the wall that are fighting to take your spot.
Yeah. Awesome. For me, I initially, you know, if a book is okay, I'll give it an 8. If I'm really blown away, I'll give it a 9. So I'll give this, I think this one, I was gonna give it an 8, but I think after this, I'll give it a 7.5. And I'll tell you why. So I'm in between both of you. The content is good. I think the content is good. I think I'll recommend it to entrepreneurs to read. You know, he sort of somehow brings a science to how to do this social media, how to build a brand on social media. So he's sort of like trying to give us a science of how to go about it, which is something that a lot of entrepreneurs don't. I mean, we leave social media to digital marketing experts. I'll get someone else to run this. It's like, you know, numbers. I'll get an accountant to do numbers. So social media is, I don't have to do this. I'll get someone to take care of this thing. You know, I'll just use it personally for my own thing. You know, but I think he's sort of bringing a science to how to do social media. Something that from my limited exposure, I haven't seen anyone else write about. So I think for me, it's an important topic. It's something that I found value in. Was I blown away? I wasn't. I wasn't like.
I think he froze, eh? Are you
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, I think he did freeze him.
I've got a reaction to what you're saying when you said that he's like an immigrant story. And I actually thought that's exactly what finding your community is. You know, like that's his community. That's what he knows. That's the story he can tell better than anybody else. And maybe that way he ends up identifying with those people, because he wouldn't be able to tell a rich kid in America who, like, remember, well, you're too young, but I remember when Vanilla Ice, when people found out that Vanilla Ice came from a rich family and we all liked his rap and he didn't have a rags to riches story.
Yeah.
Like people were, like, everybody was angry. They're like, we're not buying Vanilla Ice anymore because it's like it's a rich white kid who can rap. We don't want like a struggle gangster story. You're out in the streets, you know. Then you know, people can listen to that. So I think, but also, I mean, I have lived overseas, and I was saying, like, when you're a foreigner, you work harder than the people in the country, because, you know, it's a expensive flight back home that you don't want to get to the point where you can't even afford a flight to get back home. And for some people, it's even layered. They can't go back after saying, oh, I'm going to go to this great country and make it. You
Yeah,
either make
yeah.
it, but also the people that become immigrant and they live like second-class citizen immigrants for generations after generations.
Yes,
They
yes.
actually not make it. So I think, and and what you say that if you're not an immigrant, you can actually look at that story and say, look at this person who started from nothing and
Mm.
how, and I kind of yeah, I suppose like as you're saying, I'm like, I suppose that's his community, that's his audience, and maybe that's why
Yeah.
people in England love him, because they also become immigrants and they love this, like everybody loves the story of somebody going to America and making it.
The American dream. I mean, that's exactly what America is. Yeah, yeah. I
But
think
average
it's
we're going nowhere. We're like, we love our country. We're
yes.
I'm paying.
I think that's where that's why I say from it's a good it's a good book to read from a point of view to say, look, what more if you put your mind to it, even if you come from South Africa? Because I mean, at the end of the day, you still have to come back home to say, okay, how do I implement this at home? You know, there's something you said earlier on about what did you say? Oh, about how he wait, I just lost my train of thought, sorry. But there's something you said earlier on okay, I forgot.
Being South African, bring it home, South African, and learning from.
Yeah, well, okay, let me just continue on that. But if you can bring it home and actually implement it at home without the pressure of having to say, okay, but why isn't it working, even though I'm reading it like it is, it's just to take it and put it back into, okay, how can what does America have that we don't have, so that I can come back home and be like, okay, well, I can do this. I mean, it's a principle, basically having the principles the same, you know? So I think that, yeah, for me, it's really important from that perspective.
Okay. Dr. Rocha is back on. I think it's reconnected.
Okay.
Okay, so it's still connecting. But would you recommend the book to somebody else?
I definitely would. I think there's a friend of mine and I was speaking about this like a few weeks back on how, then again, it comes back to becoming a student of your own trade. And your own trade is your passion, right? So you're always going to want to know more. Like you're saying about China, China is growing. I mean, it grows every single day, you know. You hear there's something new about China, and how that content on just China itself is a story that no one person can ever finish, you know, and that is something that it will continue for generations, because as they grow, you grow. So the more they do, the more content you have on who is China and why are they so successful in such a short period of time. So I think I would recommend it because it gives you, again, I mean, I like listening and reading a lot of things because I just like perspective of what people are going through or people are doing out there that is different from you, because perspective is everything, you know. So yeah, I'd recommend it, definitely.
When you speak with your content, when you speak about your content, because I decided last minute that I'm doing my PhD and I should be done by now, and it's on Chinese law, right? So I'm looking at data law or whatever, cyber law. And it was mind blowing. Like I had to ask people, what does this mean? Like, what is the logic of this? What is this word? What is the difference between cyber tech, cyberspace, cyber security? Like basic foundational words. And I realized the people that I was trying to reach out to, they're experts. They don't have to think what belongs to where. And last week, I actually chose to speak at a conference with 250 people on China, Africa, and cybersecurity. And they told me like before that I need to speak on a subject that I know nothing about. So I was basically speaking in layman's terms about cybersecurity in China and how it's actually exporting, what needs to happen in cyberspace or cybersecurity or data protection between China and Africa, what needs to be worked out from a legal perspective. And I was speaking to lawyers, but I'm thinking, oh God, I know nothing. Like I'm just gonna say the wrong words about technology, about that. But I think all the lawyers in the room are just as confused as I am, and they were happy to have it simplified. So when you said that, I'm like, oh, I don't even know the yeah, I don't have vocab for it, you know. I
Yes.
still need to talk basic vocabulary around data. And then I said one thing, I was like, oh, data is it's now worth more than oil in real terms and in dollar terms. And everybody thought it's the sexiest thing I've ever said. I'm like, everybody knows technology. Like, they're like, oh my God, wow. Like, they're going to quote me. I'm like, no, don't quote me. People in data know that. They know that data is worth more than oil. Yeah. So
Sure.
I'm looking
I
forward to
think we
following
have run
him.
out of time. We need to wrap up. Sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Yes,
I
yes,
think
Dr. Rush.
yes, we need to wrap up. Yeah, so before I got cut off, I was giving it a 7 out of 7.5. It's a good book. I'll recommend it to students as well. So yeah, thanks for your inputs. Thanks for reading. And yeah, it's quite interesting to hear your insight. So the next book that we are going to read is VBS, a Dream Defrauded. Um, the reason why I think it's important we should read this, we need to understand, you know, we often talk about the one side of entrepreneurship, the good side, you know, and you know, like it's as if like it's like a straight line. You move from here, you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you are here. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the VBS is bringing the ugly side to entrepreneurship, to business. I mean, I just started reading it, but it's quite fascinating. So it's bringing the opposite side, the side when it's sort of bringing when entrepreneurship goes wrong, you know. And so I found it to be quite interesting. I know the characters in the book, like personally. I've worked with some of them a while back. I've invited some to an entrepreneurship conference that I've done. Well, not maybe not some of the guys who are related to the guys in the book. So I'm still on chapter 2, but it's quite fascinating. So that's the next book we are reading, VBS, A Dream Defrauded, When Entrepreneurship Goes Wrong. And, you know, there's 2 books that I've read that are coming closer to this. There's one called How They Blew It, by entrepreneurs. It's sort of a book, sort of sharing stories of different entrepreneurs who started businesses, did well, and at some point they blew it. And there's quite a number of reasons why they blew it. There's another book called Snakes in Suits. It talks about the psychopaths that are all in suits. They wear glamorous clothes, they look the part. And in Gary Vee's thing, it might be they are these guys who you can say these are prim and proper people that you want to do business with, but actually they're snakes. And they talks about snakes in suits when psychopaths go to work. So I've read those 2 books, and then there's this book, which also, as you're reading it, you kind of pick up that, you know, there are snakes in suits. There are people who they look like they talk the language, they look the language, they look the part, but actually there's quite a lot of things happening in the background. So I thought, let's go the opposite side of what we have always been talking about. Great, all these books that we have read, great, you know, all these amazing books that are giving us this is how to do it. This one is going the opposite direction. It says this is how not to do it. So yeah, I found it to be quite interesting. I'm sorry, I don't know if it's in audiobook.
It probably isn't.
But I think also the other interesting thing as well is it's a developing story. So it's something that's still developing. It's still, the cases are still going to go to court. So it's a current affair type of a thing, you know. So as we are reading this thing, there's all this. I mean, there was a story I think 2-3 days ago that also was uncovered related to VBS, you know, and it's sort of like a good story that went pear-shaped wrong. So yeah, I think I said in the email, I'll share the email. I think there's a month to go, 4 weeks to go. I think I said we are reviewing this on the 5th of August. It's available at Exclusive Books. I'm not so sure if it take a lot, but I know Exclusive Books, Bargain Books, If you struggle to get it, please let me know and I'll sort of check for you where you can find it. If there are those who want it for us to courier it to them, maybe let's do an arrangement and then I can get it couriered to you as well. But it has been going off the shelf. Apparently, it's been going off the shelf quite quickly. So yeah, it's a fascinating story. You will read this within a couple of days. It's gripping. It reads like a movie. You know, I'm sure if we had great movie, you know, like with Netflix opening up this platform for people who are in the movie space, this for me would make for a great movie. You know, obviously after the court cases and everything, this is gripping. It
Wow.
feels like him. And these are the guys who went to Rao, you know. I mean, I know these guys. I know this guy's personal. So
Russia, you can wait until the
so
book
I'm looking
review.
forward to
You're about
hearing.
to
Please
review the
get it.
book
I
now.
would love to hear your views on this one.
Okay, don't review it yet.
Awesome.
Wait for us
I'm
to
good.
review
Thank you
it.
so much. Last word, Tebogo.
Thank you. Sorry for recommending a hard book to get into.
No. I've stopped.
Okay.
No. I've stopped. Thanks a lot. Mali, last word.
I think it's okay about the first book again. I really liked that
No.
perspective.
No.
And then the second
Yeah.
book, though, I think this is really interesting. The fact that I know what happened, but I didn't understand how it happened, you know, in VDS.
Yeah.
And I've always liked, I think, working where I work. One of the biggest things that I've done is what not to do in a tech startup, for instance. And that's why I think this is very intriguing to actually find out like what were you guys doing? Like how did we end up here? You know, so it's one of the things that I like is what not to do when you're starting a business. So it's interesting.
Awesome. Thanks so much, colleagues. If there's anything else,
Can I say something?
Lolo,
I think
Shaba, anything else before we close?
Lolo?
Anything that you want to
Can you
add
hear me?
quickly?
Yes, Lolo, I can hear you.
Okay.
Lolo,
I've had
are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. I've had a fantastic evening.
Yes.
Listening to
Yes,
you and your different perspectives. And I'm just gonna touch on a few
Yes, I'm not
things.
so sure. Yes.
I think
yes.
Roger is having a delay.
You got cut off.
Yeah, and I think for me, when Dr. Roche told me about the next book, I was like, oh wow, we're gonna have a full house because Gary is popular and very digestible, in your face, heavily extroverted. I'm a bit surprised that not many people showed up, but I did definitely enjoy the discussions. And I think for me, I was really waiting for his feedback because him being very introverted, I wasn't surprised with what he said about his take about getting into personal branding and be like, oh my gosh, not so cosmetic. But when I think the connecting part is what Malisela was talking about, which is the aspect of content that Gary is known for. And I'm just going to touch on what stood out for today. And I think Malisela mentioned being a student of your trade. For me, that is quite intriguing. Simple, but very intriguing in terms of just being teachable and re-engineering yourself, reinventing yourself as an expert. And Tebogo, I think you really hit the nail on the head when you told Dr. Roche that if you don't brand yourself, you are branded nonetheless anyway. And I think, and the perspective will be is personal branding, cosmetic, or people will know Dr. Roche based on his output, and his output describes his brand. His brand is about consistency, it's about intelligence, it's about blah, 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 blah. So you were really spot on to say whether you like it or not, whatever you call it, you are being categorized and described as brand X. So I really like that very resolute standpoint on branding.
You know, so I actually wanted to wrap up with something that Gary, a quote that I really, really loved, and I actually made a note on it. And Gary says, cream floats to the top, no matter how many cups of coffee you put in it. And which basically become the cream, because you always float to the top.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's nice. I like that. I like
That's very good.
Yeah, that's a quote in the green book. It's like, cream always floats. And I was like, yeah, be the cream, you know. It's like you will float nonetheless, no matter how hard you try to like sink, you can't. You will always float if you actually like good content. And I'm gonna package what Marcella and what you're saying, content, not cosmetic.
Yeah, and I think there's something that Marcella mentioned about, I think both of you actually, about the immigrant attitude and ethos and just the way they do work to excellent levels. And something that we discussed during leadership classes within the Lora Center was a case study around WeWork, which reminded me, and this was around leadership, which reminded me about how immigrants normally come into a country and will really
I think Dr. Roche and Lolo swap hosting.
Yeah, because she also cut off.
Yeah, they like when one comes on board, the other one gets cut, and there's a delayed response.
Hi everyone.
Hi, Shama.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Sham, we can hear you.
Yeah. So I'll give a bit of my feedback. So I'm one of those who are always like 3 books behind in Lora book club. So I'm still reading Grit. But and I think it really helps me because I join the sessions every month. And then by the time I start reading the book, I have an idea of what to expect. So you both, Teboho and I think Malisela, if I got it right, have done like a really great job of painting the picture of what to expect. So I'm really looking forward to getting both books actually. And yeah, I'll read them. Really looking forward to it.
Okay, that's nice. You should share with us once you've read it what your take is. It'll be interesting for somebody who, because I think we all 3 thought we start with the yellow and we realized, oh, so it'd be nice for you to sort of tell us what your take was, because you're brighter, like you probably would read it in the right sequence. Yeah, so it'd be nice to
I'll start with the green one and then get on to the yellow.
Okay, I think Dr. Roche, still trying to connect. I think, okay, you want to you should close for us.
Sorry, yes, I had network issues, but I'm back now. Thank you so much, colleagues. I've missed out what Lolo said, but I'll watch it on the recording and what Chama also said. But thank you so much, Teboho. Thank you, Mali and Shama and Lolo for coming through. I know there's someone else. I'm not so sure that person. I don't know if it's Lolo Double or if there's a pseudo person.
I'm taking Gary. I was taking Gary's tips. It's Lolo number 2 AI.
All right. Okay. Yeah, but thanks a lot, colleagues. And yeah, next month we are doing VBS. And yeah, happy reading. I'll send out an email on Monday. So you have this weekend to source the book. If you have a challenge, let me know. And I will see how to get it for you. And we can make an arrangement to get it to you.
Rosh, can I give you a suggestion? The book you're recommending, I haven't read it, but just from the title, I assume it's headed in the direction of My Biggest Blunders. I don't know if there's a way you can link the book with My Biggest Blunders somehow, or at least feature it in the next My Biggest Blunders. Just an idea.
Yeah, I think we'll try and see how we can
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I think I've taken 19 minutes of your time. So thanks a lot. Madi, Teboko, Lolo, and Madi Papi. Thank you so much. And have a great evening.
You have a good
Thank
evening.
you. Good
Thanks.
night. Bye-bye.
Madi, you are next. After the BBS, we are doing subscribe. So you are next. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting book as well.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much, guys. Good night.
Enjoy evening. Bye.